Well, welcome everybody. This is our monthly Conversations About AI chat. And our guest today is none other than our amazing superintendent, Jerry Almendarez. So I'm just going to turn it over to him. If you've got questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I am so excited to be here and share with you some of the thoughts that about the conversations we're having here in Executive Cabinet, but also take any questions that you may have to hopefully provide some clarity to some of the things that are happening in the district. I will start by saying I am a big supporter of learning this innovative platform in the early stages. I've actually been engaged in ChatGPT and Bard at the very beginning. And so as quickly as it's evolved, my evolution of how I use the tools has also evolved, but also enlightened me to the point where I'm encouraging my executive cabinet to encourage their teams, to encourage their teachers to use it and to begin to explore the platforms to see how it can be used for good, but also to identify any concerns that we may have. And so as time has gone on for the past year and a half since we began this discussion, we now have enough people in the district, both certificated and classified, that are beginning to use the programs or the platforms, that we've pulled together a group of people for an initial meeting to have a conversation about AI in Santa Ana Unified School District. And our first meeting is Monday of next week. There's probably about 30 people that are going to be in attendance. That meeting was just of the people that we can, by word of mouth, that have some familiarity with it and have been using it. But when we do convene and we meet, we're going to ask for recommendations of other people that should be there. So if you weren't invited but you're interested, by all means, share us an email. Our first meeting is going to be on Monday. And some of the things that we're going to be focusing on in these conversations is, one, what platforms are people using out there in their classrooms or in their work environments? What concerns do we have when it comes to the AI platforms? What hopes do we have? What are we excited about? And then as we gather that information, that will help us begin to develop a district policy that will provide some guardrails. And we've already had some pretty interesting conversations regarding the ethical use and making sure that absent a policy, that at least we have like admin reg where we can say, okay, here's what our expectations are of how it's being used. And that's for the teacher use and the student use, but also we need to have conversations about, okay, how can we use it for learning in the classroom? Not from the teacher's lens. We will talk about that as a tool to teach, but also how can we use it as a learning tool for students? Because the jobs of the future are going to require them to have some sort of AI understanding of that, of the new environment and the innovation that's taking place. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. There's a number of teachers out there that are using it. Some of them are doing some pretty cool and amazing things. And then we also have some of our classified employees that are using it for workflow issues to try and increase payroll, increase purchase orders, so people don't have to wait months to get paid or months to get a purchase order filled. And so there's a book that we're reading called Intelligent Automation, and that's a fairly new book, and that's really more on the operational side. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're doing as a district. The other exciting things is Andrea and her team, and where did she go? Nicolina presented at the Superintendent's Advisory Council to our community leaders. I have a monthly meeting with the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, which is made up of community leaders, nonprofit, higher ed, business, faith-based community, parents. They all come together once a month to kind of get the state of the district update. And this past meeting, Andrea and Nikki Lena were part of a presentation that took our community members through a sample AI going from text to image experience. And I was telling them before we logged on that I had so many compliments from our community members that hadn't even touched AI, really kind of understand the power behind it. So that and the committee meeting that's going to be formed on Monday. But I'll stop there and pause. Andrea, if you have any specific areas you want me to talk about, or if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Well, I wanted to let everyone know that we've started a pilot of brisk teaching. I think we mentioned it at one of our previous meetings. If you're interested, all you need to do is go to briskteaching.com and add the extension using your SAUSD Learns account. And everyone has access to all the pro features, but ELA teachers and anyone else who emails Jason Crabb will have access to the scoring features. But I know we were talking about this. We want to be careful with scoring that we really focus on the feedback and, you know, on the growth mindset with our students rather than scores. But we do know that at some point we do need scores. If folks, I know some folks are typing in the chat where they work and what their context is, but what questions do you have for our illustrious superintendent? We know things are moving awfully fast in this realm.
I have a question.
Sure. Yes.
We were at a conference and we sat in on an AI panel, and a question came up, and I was wondering, Jerry, if you had any chance to look into it a little bit further. It was the question about firewalls and AI in the context of student data and privacy, right? Student privacy. I know that was a thing, right? They're talking about at these conferences, like, how do you have a firewall that's going to protect the data just within your district when you're using AI? I don't know if I mean, that's a very, very new concept, right? So I was just wondering if there's anything that's been come of that or has come of that. That's something.
So yeah, that is probably the biggest concern and biggest question I get being on panels or part of panels is privacy issues, right? And one of the things that we're faced with is right now a lot of the AI platforms like ChatGPT, Google Bard are 18 and older. So they're really not geared for the student, at least the public school student right now. What's happening is you're having these vendors come up with these AI platforms, and then they're coming into districts trying to sell us products. And that I'm more concerned about that than I am the ChatGPT and the Bard privacy issues, because as we're beginning to discover the power of this platform internally, the adults are using it, but we're asking the adults to use it followed based on the current acceptable use agreement, which means no privacy or private data input into these platforms. So that's how we're experimenting and exploring with it now. Now, as time goes on, Microsoft, Google, ChatGPT is coming up with, I forget what it's called. It's Teams right now, but there's another name they're using for it. They're developing, they're theoretically developing platforms that are secured for a particular organization that uses it. So Google right now is having conversations with us and saying, like, we can sell you a subscription to Bard that will only be, the data will be secured in your space. The problem that we have with that is, do we trust them or not? You know, and that goes the same with Microsoft. It goes the same with ChatGPT. Nobody really knows the answer to that question because things evolve so quickly. And so what I don't want to do, and I was asked a question of this today by, we're sending some people to Orange County AI Task Force tomorrow. And one of the questions was, how quickly do we want to go? Are we sure we want to be early adopters? Don't we want to wait until we're more certain about a secure platform? And I've been thinking about this for about a year and a half, and I think we can't afford to wait. We cannot afford to wait, because you think about this, governments are struggling with putting limits on it. States are struggling with banning it or opening it up. And what's happening now is if you're old enough, you'll remember the race to the moon or to space, the race to the moon. And so all of these governments were trying to speed up the evolution of their technology in order to be the first one to land on the moon, which is a noble effort. But the scary thing about what we're experiencing now is with artificial intelligence, AGI, and then quantum computing, we can't afford to wait, because those governments or those organizations that master this level of computing could potentially use it for bad things and negative things. And so with the US government, I just came back about 2 months ago from a panel. I got an invitation to sit on an AI panel with the US Department of Ed and a couple of research institutions. And one of the comments that they said is they're hesitant on putting policy out there that limits or restricts states or institutions from exploring the platforms, because the more you use it, the smarter it gets. And what they don't want to do is prohibit states, organizations, and limit their ability to learn from it and on it, because other governments and other countries, it's wide open. And it's to their advantage for it to be wide open, because the state, the government, or the industry that masters this quantum computing, theoretically, what they're saying is going to be the dominant fill in the blank. They'll control the world, is what one of the researchers said. And so that's why it's not, to me, we can't afford to wait to expose our kids to this. We can't afford to wait. The other thing too is that the evolution, it's the hockey stick effect. So within the next 5 years, researchers are saying society is going to experience 100 years of technological advancement. That's how quick this is evolving. So if I wait a year or 2 years, it's still not maybe a policy that may be acceptable or comfortable to me, but I will be behind probably 10 years in the conversation, because how quickly things are advancing. And so that's why I've landed where I've landed. And honestly, not very many of my colleagues are in the same space. There's probably 4 of us in Orange County that understand this, and the others are either not as actively engaged in trying to learn about it, or their political environments are kind of not as open-minded about it as we are here in Santa Ana. That was a long-winded answer, David. I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
I think that's on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
I do want to point out to people, though, that when you use ChatGPT, these models are learning all the time. It trains on all of your input, and on its own output. Bard, however, does not. It only trains on what it has access to through the web. Obviously, it's Google, so it has access to, tons of web. So there is a difference that way in terms of.
And I use actually 3 different platforms. I used 4, but one of them I didn't find very helpful. But I use 3. I'll put the same prompt in all 3 and then compare outputs. And then maybe take a section of output from one and combine it with a section of the output from another, and tweak it to meet my style. But yeah, and I'm experimenting. And the other reason why I've gravitated towards that multiple use is because we can't expect to just be operating on one platform. The technology is advancing so quickly that it's ChatGPT today, it may be Apple tomorrow. They're already talking about this secret platform that they're about ready to roll out. And then you have Google and then Microsoft with Copilot. So I mean, who knows where we're going to land? It's kind of like the Bitcoin when it first came out. You had a few, and then you had 100, and people are trying to navigate that environment. So that's where we're at, and I think it's to our advantage as human beings to learn as many platforms as we can, because as things change, we'll be much more in demand when the future skill sets are more clearly identified. And so for an old guy like me, my, it would be easy for me in a few years to just retire and take care of my grandkids. But, I need to be relevant and I need to be able to contribute. And if I'm going to be a retired superintendent wanting to contribute, I can't stop learning and then tell all of these younger superintendents, so here's what you need to do without knowing the new platforms. And so one of the things that I'm doing as a 15-year sitting superintendent is learning these platforms, and I'm going out and meeting with groups, anybody that will listen or that invites me to talk about reimagining school leadership and identifying the characteristics for the new leaders of the 21st century. And so that's where the space that I'm in right now, which is why with my executive cabinet, I'm putting my foot on the pedal and saying, what are you guys doing different? How are you teaching different? How are you providing staff development different? Don't tell me that we're going to our site principals and we're telling them, okay, you need to do something different, but yet we're training them by standing up in front of them and talking to them for 40 minutes at a principal's meeting. You need to model the platforms that you're using. Executive cabinet and directors need to whip out the laptops and get on ChatGPT or one of the platforms and then take the principals through a problem that they're dealing with at the school sites to have these AI platforms used as thought partners to help them navigate the craziness that is out there. One of the biggest issues that we get from talking when we do our student listening sessions, our teacher listening sessions, and our admin listening sessions is we don't have enough time. We want to be more engaged with students, and we want to do all these things, Mr. Almendarez, but we just don't have the time because you guys pull us in 150 different directions. So we have all these emails that we have to, these reports that we have to write, all of these accountability models that we have to check off. Well, if we learn how to use the AI platforms and take the information that we're able to plug into it, maybe it will help speed up the process of completing those routine tasks that will free you up to do the other things that we're asking you to do. And that's really the lens that we're trying to operate under, is how can we learn AI at a leadership level that will help us create reports or generate lessons much faster than it taking me 3 or 4 days to prepare for the following week. And so that's kind of where it's at. I'll stop there if anybody has any other questions.
I've got a question. So as a teacher that's in the middle of this, let's say in theory, I've had students using ChatGPT for task management and for getting these things. I only had it after ChatGPT updated to 13, which was last year. And I've got 15-year-olds. So I've had them plan out essentially their PBL. So I teach a PBL class only. And I've had them essentially self-direct themselves to their task management so that when they walk in, they know what they're doing every single week. And I had ChatGPT come up with that 6-week plan for them. So I'm just wondering, as far as like FERPA and those privacy considerations, what territory I'm operating in.
So there is no territory. I mean, you're operating in uncharted territories, Tim, which is why you're part of you got the invitation to be on the committee. But I will tell you this. So, and this is why we need to pull the committee together, because if somebody like you is experimenting with a platform and there's real value to it, and we're not so fearful about anything bad happening, then what I need to know as a superintendent is, okay, if this is working for you and it's a good thing for kids and parents approve of it, what can we do to support you policy-wise to make sure that others are able to replicate something similar? And that's really the intent behind bringing this committee together, is to really, because my fear is like, so right now, a lot of superintendents are hesitant on having this conversation, or they're all excited and they're having a conversation, but nobody's listening, right? Everybody's scared, or their anxiety is high. They don't want to touch it because they don't want to get in trouble. What we did back about 1.5 years ago is I've actually been talking about AI for about 1.5 years. The problem is nobody's been listening, right? I've been bringing it up to my executive cabinet. They roll their eyes and they say, he's crazy. We've had articles. I print out articles from the World Economic Forum, from the McKinsey Research Institute. And I say, here, look at what the experts are saying, and they read it, we talk about it, and then they roll their eyes and they go back and do what they've always done. And so it wasn't until the AI platform started to become more mainstream, more on TV, more in the news, that people started to say, oh, this is something important. And so that's when they really started to say, okay, what do we need to do, and how do we need to navigate this? And so as a result of that, they started giving permissions to the CPSs, I'm sorry, to the class teachers and the future ready teachers, and been giving them permission to explore, and other individuals in the district that have been shown an interest in it, like you. You and I had a conversation very early in it, and I was like, go for it, dude, just experiment with it. But we've been doing that for about 1.5 years. And so as it has evolved, and as I'm getting the feedback, I'm hearing more and more teachers are using it at some level, that I feel, okay, now is the time to come together as a district and have this unified conversation so we can provide the support where we need to. One, to identify the fears, identify the hopes, and gather that information of what platforms are being used so we can help vet them and maybe reduce the costs if they're really good. Because if we purchase in large quantities and we get a discounted rate. And then also to use that data to help us draft a policy for cover for the people that are using it. Another long-winded response. I'm sorry, Tim.
No, thank you. It kind of needs to be a long-winded one because
Yeah.
it's very complex. So
Yeah.
thank you.
There's a question in the chat that was not addressed. What is the timeline for proposing our district policy?
That is
I'm assuming it's for AI.
There is no identified timeline, and the reason why, I mean, I would like to have it as soon as possible. So when we meet on Monday, we're gonna have a conversation about what it is that's happening, but we're also gonna say, okay, our goal is, like, I would love to have a policy by the end of this school year, so we can begin the next year in a comfortable space. But I don't know how realistic that is, because things are changing so quickly. And at least have a skeleton or a draft policy that we can vet with the advisory committee, and vet with legal counsel, vet with county council, and just some reassurances that we're not going to be alone. Because right now, my fear as a superintendent is it's going to be the state of California against Santa Ana Unified School District, in this class action AI, first of its kind in the nation. And I don't want to be in that space, which is why we're trying to develop these policies to the best of our ability. Any other questions? If you're a reader, if you're into this type of stuff, I would recommend a book that is probably one of the best that I've read. It's called It's called The Coming Wave. And that is a real eye-opener.
So you mentioned that there's 3 platforms you're using. Can you share a little bit about, well, what they are, and then how you're using them for your own
Yes.
personal?
So ChatGPT 4, version 4. I was using Jasper, but we ended that subscription. It was a little complicated for us. Bard, and a platform called Perplexity AI. And Perplexity AI, at the time I started using it, was, to my surprise, like one of a kind, almost better than ChatGPT, because what it did is, once you would enter a prompt, it would also identify the resources that it was using to create that prompt. And it was giving you links to the websites that it was pulling the information on. So if I asked it to give me, how can a superintendent create a presentation on the use of AI in public schools, it would provide, I would type in that prompt, it would provide maybe 15 resources above the prompt with websites that either had PowerPoint presentations, video examples, and or research from very reputable research institutes that supported the prompt, the output that it was giving. ChatGPT didn't do that at the time, but now it's starting to evolve and do that. So this is what I mean by being multilingual when it comes to different platforms.
And what are some of the things that you're personally using it to, besides that, other things that maybe you're using it or that,
Outside of work or it's for work?
well, I don't know, for your, maybe for your productivity.
Okay, so for productivity, it's emails and to help me with my social media posts. It is a game changer when it comes to that. Before I would type in I would create the post, and then if you know me long enough, you know that I'm not the best speller or writer. So I would write a caption, and it would take me 3 days to post it because I'd have to have my wife read it. I'd have to go back and read it 4 times to make sure the periods were there. It was grammatically correct. Now I take the text that I write, I plug it into any of the platforms, and I ask it if it's grammatically correct. And then lo and behold, 9 out of 10 times it makes some recommended changes, and then I copy and cut those pastes and put it back in. And then sometimes I'll use it. Give me a catchy headline. I love this video. Or I love this picture. Give me a funny caption for this post. And then I say, give me 5 or 6 of them, and it'll give me 5 or 6 of them. I have my office staff using ChatGPT to assist with workflow issues here. They're using it to respond to the thousands of emails that we get. No longer having to sit down and actually think of a response and write it. They'll cut and paste an email that we get from a vendor, plug it into ChatGPT, and they'll say, respectfully decline this request to meet. Hit a button, it'll give an output, they'll read it, they'll put it in the electronically in my draft box. They'll say, I'll go in and review all of my drafts. If there are no changes that I need to make, then I'll hit send. If there are changes, then I'll make the changes, soften it up, or say different things, and then send it out. So that has sped up a lot of responses that I'm able to give to the thousands of emails that I get in a day. We've taken site SIPSAs and we've plugged them into ChatGPT and asked it to summarize the site plans and to see it and put the board priorities in there and the LCAP in there, and to see if there's any discrepancies in what the sites are creating. So we're kind of experimenting with all of these different ways of using it. I had in my facilities department, we have a gentleman that has to read the MOUs that come in, and they're legal documents about 65 pages long. And most of them are standard templates, but once in a while you'll have a few things in there that people try and, I don't want to say sneak in, but are putting in for the benefit of their company. And so we took a PDF version of one of these documents, plugged it into ChatGPT, and told it, you're the superintendent of a school district, review this document and identify any areas that would be of concern to the district. And in 30 seconds, it spit out 12 areas of that report that now he was able to go back and spend a little bit more time looking at. So things like that.
That's really cool. Several people have asked about who should they email if they're interested in joining the AI task force.
That would be Adriana Olson. But don't email her until after this meeting so I can tell her to expect the emails. No, I'm just kidding. You can go ahead and email her.
Adriana, what's the last name?
Olson.
Oh.
She's one of my executive assistants.
Okay, I think I've got the email in the chat. Hopefully that's right. Oh, thanks, Nicolina. Very fast. So other questions? What other things are people playing with for your school sites?
At our site, we just got an early adopter thing for DFIT. That's one that's been really particularly useful, especially in the humanities. It's a text scaffolder. It's one of the tools that's kind of rolled into like Magic School and Eduade, the ones that have like a smorgasbord of things to choose from. That's a little overwhelming for new users. Eduade's really like nicely packaged. It's not super expensive. I think for all of ALA K-12, we paid like $1,200. It really wasn't that bad. it does what it really does is in the click of a button, it creates amazing organizers, amazing like worksheets, vocabulary activities, Google slide activities. It can make a Google form quiz. It can do and a million different ways of exporting it. It has KWL charts, like literally every edu protocol and theory, and it can do that as well. Yeah. And DFID certification for those of us that are early adopters that want to kind of be leaders takes like 20 minutes to go through it. Not to diminish your accomplishment, Kevin. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's a couple of videos and it's actually super easy to get certified in it, especially if you're kind of techie minded, which I'm assuming if you're here, most of you are. Sorry, Kev. But yeah, no, it's really great. Another one I've been using Magic School a lot, that has a lot of those resources. I'm actually in the process, but now that I know that there's stuff happening at the district level, I was going to see if I could get something for our site specifically, but might hold off on that if we're doing stuff at the district level. But that's another one that has a ton of great tools. I used it today for a really great lesson on creating exemplars and non-exemplars for AP World History. So it went really great, and I was able to specify I specifically want to focus on leaving out the evidence or the analysis, and that way I could point my students to say, okay, this is what it looks like with no evidence. You know, looks like you didn't do any of the reading or whatever. So yeah, so those two tools are outside of making like really long-winded custom GPTs and that we can't really do anything with yet. But also I've been making like custom tutors. Like I make a page-long prompt and say copy and paste this prompt and then go from there, continue the conversation. I've done that a couple of times for like AP macro tutoring. But yeah, as far as platforms, Magic School and DFID have been kind of the standouts for me in the past month or two.
Part of the conversation that we're going to be having in the committee, the advisory committee, is to identify the platforms that teachers are using. So, you know, our hope is, I was having a conversation with, where's she at? One of our future ready teachers here. And they were talking about creating a prompt library. And I thought, ooh, you know what? For those teachers that are new or emerging to the platforms, that would be great, is for me to have a library of prompts that I could use that are standards aligned, that would give me a very easy, simple way to begin to learn how to use the platforms. And so along those lines is having a platform library that is district approved.
Mhm. We also talked about in the site leads meeting last week that it'd be helpful to have a series of lessons available to teach students ethical use of these tools, to have, you know, pre-made lessons that could be implemented at the different grade levels.
Yeah. One of the, and that is probably higher up on the priority list as we begin to use these platforms more. But I will say one of the other things that we talked about with Saba Kidwai will be facilitating these meetings for us. But was to have, I want to have, like we do with the student listening sessions and the adult listening sessions, I want to pull a panel of students together and have similar conversations with them. How are you guys using it? What is good? What's bad? What do you wish we could do differently with it? And what platforms would be valuable for you? Have the same conversation with teachers, have the same conversation with principals, so we can all get a better understanding of what those issues are at the various levels that they're being used. And you know, this is really modeled after the research that is being done out there. So I sit on the executive board for the Council for Greater City Schools, and I'm actually on Friday we'll be at the executive board meeting here in Long Beach. And the conversations that, well, they've developed a checklist for AI, and it's about a 60-page document, but like every other 60-page reference, it's very technical, but not necessarily good for the culture of Santa Ana. So we're picking pieces off it and rolling out the areas that we think would be best fit for us. And so we kind of tweaked it a little bit, but that's really, being inclusive in these conversations, because we're all learning. We need to learn what we're doing. We need to share. And then once we know that, we need to share with other districts, other teachers from other districts and other industries. The requests that I've been getting, I've had industry partners come in and say, we want to be on your AI committee. And I told them, let us meet first. Let us get rolling, get our act together, and then we'll start to open it up for industry experts, because they want to know what we're doing. They want to know how they can help us. One of the, a little bit similar but different topic, I was telling Andrea that I'm meeting with the representatives from Apple, and the conversation, I'm trying to get them to pilot Santa Ana with the new ViewSonics. I asked them, give us a classroom set or a few classroom sets, come in, train the teachers on how to use this, and then let's monitor the growth of students for 3 months and see what outcomes we get, and use us as a intro test case to the public schools in the classroom. We have a teacher at Adams Elementary who we bought a classroom set of Oculuses for her severely handicapped students, and she loves it.
What are the students doing with them?
They're using them for sensory, the mindfulness, the meditation, and just kind of trying to get them to reduce their anxiety and stuff like that. So she has one at home for her child, and she said it did wonders for them, and she wanted to see if she could get a classroom set for her kids.
That's really cool.
I thought, after hearing that, I thought, shoot, I'm going to get one for me. Yeah, board meeting days.
Walter, have you guys been using any AI to help with IEPs? Because I know some of them have IEP goal generators. Is that anything you've played with yet?
We've done some training for teachers on IEP goal writing, but I haven't specifically used any, obviously, since I'm not in the classroom, but I believe teachers are using them. It's pretty phenomenal what Magic School Bus can do. But context is a real key for making those goals effective, and data. So I've been playing with it just a little bit, and I like some of the feedback that I've gotten. I actually paid for Chat GPT 4, and I like that a good bit better than both Magic School and even Bard.
Yeah.
But I like the paid one a little bit better. A little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they make it better on purpose. Well, it's also current.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Versus 3.5, which is free, only goes to what, January of 22 or something.
22,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
Oh.
Which I think is that's probably what convinced me to pay the monthly subscription. You know what I mean? Because that is a considerable gap. I just want to be in the know with all of that newer technology. So yes. One question that I did have, and I put it on the survey. It's kind of a complex question, but is the state of California advising districts on how to add additional protection? One thing that I do have a concern about is if kids are using it on our network and they do slip up and put in personal information. So I'm just wondering, is there another layer that can be considered, or that the state of California is adding? No, it's just you're in, huh? You're in swimming with the sharks.
So they're not even saying we're in. So before this meeting, I was in a state board of education meeting, and there was an AI item on the agenda that I wanted to hear more about. And so what the presenters were asking the state to do was to create policy. Okay, and I don't know how they're going to do that, because when I was in Washington, D.C., the Department of Ed in DC was hesitant on creating policy, because the one is they don't want to confine too much, but then there's a liability risk, if they don't allow people to use it. So they're really avoiding the decision on that. But what they are doing is they're creating recommended guidelines. and they're leaving it up to the local LEAs to make those decisions. So I've reached out to organizations like ISTE, Council for Greater City Schools, Core District, ASA, and which is the American Association of School Administrators, and everybody is in the same boat. Is like, here's the process to have conversations to create your policy, and here are the guidelines, the ethical use, similar to our acceptable use policies.
And so now that there is a policy, an adopted policy in Britain, right? We'll have some information if we can get our hands on that and just figure out some of the best practices. I'm more like I said, I'm just more concerned that somebody kind of steps in, and if kids are using it and they're using it, even though we're advising them not to put in personal information, but they do, I just worry about what that liability looks like on the backside.
Think about this, Walter. They're already using it outside of the district system. The district system is probably the most secure system that they will ever operate in, which is why they don't like operating in it. So they're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat, they're on whatever platforms they're on, uploading pictures of themselves. Just imagine what they're doing, private, minor information, and it's going to a cloud. And whoever has that data most likely is selling that data to the highest bidder, and you get what you get, where the algorithms kick in and advertising starts to show up, or you talk about buying a couch, and then 2 days later you get a mailer from discount from a couch company.
Sure, that's exactly right.
So it's already happening around us. The phones are there. If you don't turn your microphone off, it's hearing your conversations, your GPS. As soon as you pick up your phone in the morning, the information is going to the cloud and it's tracking you. So all of that stuff is already happening. And the question is, like with AI, how do we learn how to use it so we can use it for good and not bad? And I think that's kind of the space that I'm in right now. So, which is why a lot of districts aren't talking about it. And they're trying to put it off until policy is created, or to the state says, okay, here's what you need to do. The problem with that is we have industry out there that are the drivers of the economy, right? And we've had the Orange County CEO Collaborative, which is made up of about 60 CEOs and companies within Orange County that are tech-driven companies that are coming to the county schools and saying, we need you guys to work with us because we don't have a pipeline of workers. If we don't get a pipeline, we're going to have to leave and go to other countries where they do have the skill set. And so they're wanting to keep their business here. One, because it's in Orange County in Southern California, probably the most habitable place on the planet, given all of the global issues that we're faced with, the civil unrest and the wars and the global warming and the food insecurity, all of that stuff. Southern California is a place that is going to be impacted. And so if we don't start to pay attention and start to give our kids opportunities to build these skill sets, then they're going to go someplace else. Now, because Southern California is such a prime piece of real estate in the world, what you're going to see if we don't start to change things is populations from other parts of the world migrating to those parts of the world that are most habitable, which we think we're in Orange County. We don't have the problems that they have in Texas or other parts of the world. We just don't have them yet. And if we do nothing, we're going to be so overwhelmed that we won't be able to find public transportation. Our schools won't be, so many things could happen that. So in my mind, we need to give our kids the skills and the opportunities to understand this technology and become innovators so they can go out and solve the problems that we're faced with if we just ignore them. Because I won't, well, maybe I will with the nanotechnology and the synthetic engineering. Maybe I'll be alive 100 years from now, but it's really the next generation that we have to prepare for. Because if we don't, that's the other thing. So right now we've hired the Institute for the Future to come and work with Executive Cabinet. They're out of Stanford. And what they do is they're training us on how to operate under the framework of strategic foresight. And so we are creating scenarios 5 to 10 years from now of, if there were no boundaries, what would public education look like? What would school look like? And so we're having these conversations, creating these different scenarios, hoping that the worst case scenario doesn't happen, and trying our hardest to get to the best case scenario. And so that's kind of the strategic planning that we're doing with the framework for strategic foresight, which is where you're seeing astronauts, the NASA shooting missiles at asteroids, trying to change the trajectory of them. Or you see the race to Mars happening right now. All of that is developed under the framework for strategic foresight, given the fact that the planet Earth is uninhabitable. Where's the human race going to go? Now you add on top of that quantum computing, and once that is mastered, there are no limits. They're talking, and the quantum computers are made out of atoms, and they're multidimensional. So the possibilities when these computers are intelligent enough to operate at full capacity, you're talking about time travel. You're talking about creating atoms that don't exist yet. You're talking about reversing the aging process. You're talking about healing and creating cures for all of the disease that currently exists. Synthetically growing your own food instead of having to kill animals for it. All kinds of worlds and possibilities open up when you get to that quantum computing. Didn't mean to scare you or sidetrack this conversation. I apologize.
Now I understand the moniker futurist under your name. I can really appreciate that. Thanks for that. That was good. That was good.
Are there other questions, or does anyone else want to share maybe something you've done with your students or your staff using generative AI?
Actually, I had a quick question here. Shane Tappa at Santa Ana High School. I'm hiding with another teacher here, Nellie Rojas. I'm sorry I joined the meeting a little bit late. I was at our site level ILT discussing the same things. Maybe this has already been addressed, but I caught a little bit of what you were saying there about how you don't want us as a district to get ahead of the state because of getting sued. I assume at the county and the state level, they're just as much in a holding pattern as us trying to figure this out.
No, it's actually the opposite. I don't want to get sued, but I don't want to wait, because they'll never, in all of the spaces that I've been in the past year and a half, nobody really has an answer to that. And what I do know is we can't afford to wait, because if we wait, the environment and the innovation is going to take off without us. So what we're trying to do is to learn it at early stages. And actually I've pulled together a district advisory committee that we have about 30 people that are a part of. On Monday, we're having these conversations about what platforms are being used, what are your fears, what are your hopes with this innovation, and that will help us create some policies, district policies, that we can feel comfortable about operating in. One example with a teacher on the call right now, Tim, was talking about, hey, I've asked my kids to use this platform. I don't want to get in trouble. That's the whole purpose of having this conversation, is if a teacher's using an AI platform, and if we're finding that it's valuable and it's non-threatening, then I want to be able to support those teachers that are doing that. And I want to be able to say, if it's that good, we need to open it up for other teachers in other schools to consider using this as well.
Thank you. To clarify, so at OCDE and of course up in Sacramento, are they doing similar things to what we're doing, or are we kind of ahead of the curve?
Andrea, you work with them up there more than I do.
I think in terms of OCDE, they just hired I think some of you guys might know Wes Crissell. He used to be in Santa Ana. I don't know his new title, but it's something director of AI or coordinator of, and he's kind of facilitating a lot of these conversations at the county level. I did post a link in the chat. The state, it's not really a policy, it's just, I guess, the state
Guidelines.
thinking on AI.
Yeah.
It's called Learning with AI, Learning About AI. And it's just some more things to ponder and consider. It's not really a policy.
They're calling it information for for us, for the educators. We do have Adobe partnership, right? And if you look at the Adobe Firefly, that is totally safe for students. So this is something, if you do want to have experiment with the students, the text to image with the literacy, component, could be used in any content. That could be a start, right? Because we are board approved to use Adobe and Adobe for Education. So we're good with the AI component, I think, with them. Correct, Jerry?
Yes.
Because they're part of it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So it's
Because Adobe's a closed ecosystem,
Yeah.
and everything created within Adobe is copyright friendly. We don't have to worry about copyright issues because there's issues with some of these other images. In fact, I used Imagine to create this robot. I don't know if it's copyright friendly or not, right? I don't know where it where the ideas came from or where the components came from.
To my friend at Santa Ana High School, I think at least at the superintendent level, not very many superintendents in Orange County are comfortable having these conversations. They are sending their teams to the AI trainings at the county office. And so Santa Ana is part of that. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'll be with my team at the AI training there with probably about 20 other districts. But I would say, I would be comfortable saying that in Santa Ana, we have more teachers engaged in experimenting with the platforms than in most districts in Orange County. And in Santa Ana at the executive cabinet level, we are probably one of 2, maybe 3 districts that are having this conversation at the executive cabinet level. So it's still in the early stages, rollout for public education. Back to your policy question. I just came back from Washington, D.C. The State Department of Ed is really doesn't have any foresight into any particular regulations or guidelines. State of California is having conversations and they're making recommendations, but nobody really has wrapped their head around any policy or guidelines to give guidance to school districts. So we're on our own, which is why we're not going to wait around. And in Santa Ana, what I'm hoping to do is by having these conversations at this early stages, that we serve as a model for the state of California and the Board of Education to say, here's a sample policy that could be helpful for other districts across the state and across the country.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
We have other questions. We have about 6 minutes left.
And I really do want to hear concerns if you have any concerns or just your reflections, because it really does help me navigate these conversations that I have, especially on Monday, but with our team here at the executive cabinet level.
Well, I think we're all concerned about privacy, obviously. And like Tim said, not getting in trouble. But I think it's really great the way so many people are pushing the boundaries and just trying things to see what works. My big concern is that teachers are going to use some of these tools to replace instruction, right? I mean, DFID is really cool, has some really cool features, but if you're not careful, it could be a worksheet replacement.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not innovative teaching.
Correct.
I was talking with Jason Crabb about some of the leveling of texts. And while we know it's important that, a lot of our students, our English learners, our special ed students can't access some of the higher level texts. So it's great to be able to bring that level down. But then we have to be careful that we don't always bring it down, that we also expose them to the higher level texts, because if we never expose them to the higher level and the grade level texts, they're never going to get that rigor, right? So
let me ask
I'm
you
concerned with balancing that, balancing those things.
Let me ask you this. So I haven't had enough time to do my research, but I saw Samsung came out with a real-time translator on their phone. I don't know if you guys have seen that. So in real time, you could have a conversation and their phone will translate Spanish into English in real time. So my question, as I saw that, I'm like, one, is this really real? So I didn't have enough time to do my research. But the second thing I thought with, as our EL population is one of our largest populations, but also the most challenging, one of the most challenging populations we have, what if kids were able to speak in their native language, but communicate in English? And what does that do to the ethical use of technology? And if they're able to do that and be successful, why, if it's a problem, why is it a problem? You know, and so this is how fast things are evolving. And so this is why we can't wait for the state or the federal government to find solutions. If this is real, and if we're able to translate in real time, then I'm gonna be one of the first ones to buy it so I can speak Spanish to my parents in real time as I'm visiting schools, you know? And not on a computer generated video. But how powerful is that? And I'm thinking, man, I would even go as far as to insert a chip in my, I'm just kidding, but you know, I mean, those are things like, give me a chip and I can speak 100 languages, you know? But it's exciting but scary at the same time. I do want to end with this. So one of the things that I keep telling our people, our team, and Cesar is here, it is like, if we want to predict the future, we have to create it.
Mhm.
We have to, and that's a Peter Drucker quote, who was an author. We have to create the future that we want. I don't want to be a superintendent or a district that sits around waiting for things to evolve and then have it happen to us. I want to be an innovative district. I want teachers to have fun teaching. I want teachers to have fun learning. I want students to wake up in the morning and can tell their parents, let's go to school. I can hardly wait to get to school. I want our industry partners to say, oh my God, we need to work with Santa Ana because look at the amazing things they're doing. And I want our enrollment to increase. And why can't we have kids from other parts of the state or other parts of the country come in and take advantage of the programs that we offer here in Santa Ana? Why can't we have kids in Mexico and Canada and Singapore zoom in to take advantage of the learning that's happening in the United States that is comparably different to the other parts of the world? And why can't we get credit for them? So these are like the hopes and dreams that I have. And I know we're maybe not going to get there, but we can get some form of there. But I share this with you because this is the environment that we have to work on creating for all of us, is to take risks, to have fun, to learn from our mistakes, but keep moving forward and dream the impossible, you know? And so there's a quote that, one of my favorite quotes I'll find here and then I'll stop talking, I promise. This is why they give me the mic at the LCAT meetings.
While he's looking for the quote, you find it?
I did.
Okay.
It's from Jane McGonigal, and she's the author of Imaginable, a book called Imaginable. And she says that it is our responsibility to make the unimaginable imaginable. And then an author from the Institute for the Future says, whose imagination are you living in? And you think about that, whose imagination are you living in? And so that's where I gravitate back to, that if we want to predict the future, we have to create it. And it's not a Jerry we, it's a collective we. Because I can talk till I'm blue in the face, and if nobody does anything, then nothing's going to get done. So it's a team effort.
Very true.
There.
Well, thank you so much. Amazing conversations. I did post an attendance reflection form, if everybody'd be so kind as to complete it. And then I also, shameless plug, for those of you who haven't met in person, I am also president of Orange County Q Computer Using Educators. And we have a local conference. Thank you. We have a local conference on February 3rd in Huntington Beach. Everything instructional technology. We do have some sessions on AI. In fact, yeah, we have some sessions on AI. We have quizzes, and Nearpod are going to be there. And sessions on all sorts of instructional technologies, edu protocols, things for ideas for coaches, ideas for counselors, ideas. So hope you can join us. It's going to be a fun day, and we've got some surprises lined up. So it'll be fun. Oh, and we're honoring, for those of you who know Don Isabel, he is the director of CTE. He is the Orange County Q Administrator of the Year. And Claire Jimeno is the Orange County Teacher of the Year, the Orange County Q Teacher of the Year. And let me see what, Michelle Molina from LRCA is the Orange County Q Emerging Teacher of the Year. So very exciting. We have three nominees that their names are being submitted for the overall Q Award, but they'll be honored on that day. So if you know them, come support them too. So.
Andrea, I have to go. I have another meeting at 4:30. I got to
Well,
get.
thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for.
I'll hang out here if anybody else wants to chat for a little bit longer. But thank you, Jerry, so much. We appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and stop.